Welcome back everybody to another one of my aviation news roundup videos, and this is going to be episode 5 in the series, and we're going to be covering the news that happened within the month of June of 2023. Now it's a little bit off. I normally film these on my Mondays, however my work schedule is changing, so I'm no longer going to have the Mondays off. I'm still going to try to get these released early in the month, so sometime in early July it will cover the month of June. Starting in August, it might not be that first Monday, might change slightly, but I still plan to get this out as early as I can in the month, covering the previous month's news. And I've got some interesting news here to cover. There's some follow-ups from some previous months and some new topics to go over and introduce. And as always, before we get too far into this, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. And just before we jump into the video, I want to say thank you to everybody who is out there watching. If you do enjoy what you watch or what you're seeing here on this channel and you haven't yet, down below, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. That will let all of you know when I release new videos. And I have quite a bit of videos lined up for release over the next few weeks, into the next few months. So there's lots of content coming out. Also, if you feel like you want to help in a bit more of a concrete way, down below in the comment section, you'll find, in the description, you'll find a link to my coffee account. You can go over there and buy me a coffee. I don't have a coffee right now. It is, I don't even know what time it is. It's 7:45. It's 7:45 in the evening. I'm not going to drink a coffee this late. I'll be up half the night. But I normally do have a coffee while I'm down here plugging away at the desk or at the computer or doing any of these videos. So I do appreciate every little bit of help that can be provided, but don't feel like I'm begging for money, because I'm not. I do what I do because I enjoy it, and I get to take you along for the ride. Anything else is just a bonus. All that being said, let's jump into this video, take a look at the news. I got my laptop here in front of me to reference some notes, make sure I don't miss anything, and we'll get right into this. So the big headline, I mentioned it last month with the purchase of Sunwing by the news from last week with Westjet, or the last month with Westjet, was the pilot strike that was averted. And the rumor was that Swoop would be reintegrated into mainline Westjet. And it has officially been announced by Westjet that that is happening. Swoop will be no more. It's going to be later this year into next year before the Swoop fleet finally completely reintegrates with Westjet, but it is going away. As well, with the purchase of Sunwing, it has been announced that Sunwing will be folded into mainline Westjet. So we're going to be losing both Swoop and Sunwing in the Canadian airline market in the next little while. Now that's big news, as that is 2 of the 4, really 5 big low-cost airlines in Canada. These were the airlines that allowed you to get around the country on a relatively inexpensive ticket. 2 of the 5 are gone. All we're going to have left with when those 2 are gone are going to be Rouge, Air Canada Rouge, but that's mostly a vacations airline. You can't catch a Rouge flight from Ottawa to Vancouver or anything. They usually fly south, so that's going to be one. We've got Lynx. Lynx is starting to increase routes. They don't have a lot, and their frequency isn't very high. They're a bit of a slow-growing airline. Maybe they'll grow a bit faster when this all happens, but there's them. And then there's Flair, and that's it. Flair, Rouge, and Lynx are going to be the only real low-cost airline that we're going to see. Otherwise, it's going to be Westjet or Air Canada as your options to fly around within Canada and whatnot. And that's not a very good model for competition in the market. So it's going to be interesting to see long-term where ticket prices go, especially with the current economy and inflation and the increase in costs anyways. Plus, you see these pilot deals that both Westjet has. Also Air Canada, I'm not sure if I mentioned it in the last video, but the Air Canada Pilots Union is ending their contract a year early to start renegotiation after seeing what Westjet got and what a number of other unions have got, not just in aviation, but around the entire market. The Air Canada Pilots Union has decided to go into negotiations a year early to try to, ride the wave and get larger increases. So you're going to see some increases, some significant increases in ticket prices. We've also got the new Bill of Rights, which I brought up in previous videos. So you're going to start to see some significant raising on airline tickets in Canada with all of these pressures on the airlines. Factor that in with a reduction in competition, and it's not a good sign for the average person. So hopefully airlines like Flair and Lynx, and to a lesser extent Rouge, can pick up the slack and keep some competition and keep some lower cost tickets available to the general public here in Canada. So time will tell where that goes, but not very good news. As well, a bit of a quieter headline, only real, something I picked up on that I noticed, but isn't a real big aviation headline. Tamarack is building an active winglet for the Dash 8. Tamarack already has a winglet available for the Citation CJ1. I've seen a couple of them come through, but they're now working on a Dash 8, and they're working with, I'm working off the top of my head here, I don't have the notes, I believe it's Wildrow Airlines they're partnering with to develop this active winglet, and they're also working on an active winglet for the A320. But the 320 already has winglets to begin with, so that's a bit of a you're kind of already working on those lines. There's already something out there. The Dash 8 does not have winglets. There's no option for winglets on a Dash 8. So building one is an amazing proposition. And now active winglets, for those who don't understand, they started on the CJ. And it was because it gets a bit complicated. I need, I'll find something here. I'll use one of my daughter's models that she's working on. So when you have an aircraft, you get the wingtip vortices coming off the wing. So if you add a winglet, the winglet will reduce the vortice and allow more of the wing to create lift, which is more efficient. You lose less drag off the vortice, and also because the vortice isn't losing, you gain a little bit of extra lift on the wingtip. The problem is if your wing spar hasn't been designed to take the extra load of that lift, a winglet can actually overstress your wing. And that's a reason why the Boeing 737-400 does not have winglets. You can retrofit winglets on the 300, you can't retrofit winglets on a 400. Because the 400 is bigger and it weighs more, it puts more stress on the wing spar. And if you put a winglet, it actually will overstress the spar, and you can't do it. There's no way to put winglets on a 747. The same is true with a Dash 8. The Dash 8, if you put a winglet on a Dash 8, you can overstress the wing because you're creating more lift out at the tip, and the moment is greater than what the spar was designed to withstand. Now, an active winglet, what will happen is if you're putting the aircraft into, say, a left turn, right? Your right aileron goes down, your left aileron goes up, it puts it into a left turn, from my perspective. Well, if you have an active winglet, what will happen, let's say, for example, you have a winglet and you have an active winglet up here. Aileron goes down, wing comes up. But because of that extra winglet and the extra lift, you're putting a lot more bending moment on the wing that can cause a failure. The active winglet has another control surface. So if you, for example, put your aileron down to increase lift, the active winglet has a little aileron that goes up, and it unloads that wingtip, and it's as if the wingtip doesn't exist. Aerodynamically, it unloads the wingtip, so it does not put the extra stress on the spar. So when you're in, excuse me, apologies. When you're in level flight, you get all the benefits of having the extra wingspan and the winglet and the vortice reduction and all the drag reduction and the fuel economy increases, all of the benefits of having the winglets. But as you roll the aircraft and you're loading up the wing, that will unload itself automatically by using an opposite direction control surface, and it's as if it doesn't exist. So it aerodynamically cancels out the winglet when you're putting the wing into a high stress or higher stress position. And it's an amazing technology. There's a lot of engineering that goes into it, and there's a lot of testing and safety that goes into it, which is why we don't see a lot of them on the market. But they have them on the CJ1, they're working on a Dash 8, and they're working on an A320. And that's where you can start looking at some of these older aircraft that don't have winglets, or even aircraft that do have winglets. You can add new winglets. Like I said, a 320, an older 320 has those little tiny winglet plates. They're not big giant winglets, they're little tiny winglet plates. But if you can retrofit a sharklet, is what Airbus calls them, a Neo style winglet onto a classic Airbus and use an active winglet to unload, it's a game changer. You're going to add, a potential double-digit fuel savings onto legacy airframes, and it's going to be a huge game changer for some of these older airlines that are flying these older aircraft. You're not investing hundreds of millions of dollars in a new plane. You're buying a $5 million winglet. So it's really big if it works. It's some big news, and it's going to be very interesting to see where it goes from there. Now, as well, I haven't put it in my notes, but I remember reading about it on the same note. Boeing is going forward along with NASA to build let's see if I can remember the term they use. It's a transonic truss wing. So basically, it looks like a Cessna 172. It's a high wing with a brace, but it's a very thin wing, highly aerodynamic, highly efficient. And they're working, I believe it's the X-66. I'll put pictures up. I'll correct it if I'm wrong. But they're working with NASA to have a full-size demonstrator flying relatively quickly. I believe it's within a few years. They want to have a demonstrator flying. They're going to be using a modified Boeing 717 fuselage, which at the end of the day is a modified MD-80 fuselage, which is a modified DC-9 fuselage. But they're working on using that to create a prototype, an X-plane prototype to fly and validate the design. And if it works, we could be within the next 20 years seeing these transonic truss wings, in operation. That also brings around the possibility of the newer engines being used. There's a new development of engine where it has an unexposed fan. It looks just like a giant propeller on the front of a jet engine, and it's a lot more efficient than the current engines we use. But you can't really put them on modern airliners because you have these exposed blades close to the ground. But if you have a truss wing and the engine can be mounted up high, you can use these new fan engines, these new, I wish I could remember the name of them, but like I said, I'm working off memory here. I didn't write any notes on it. You'll be able to actually use these, as I'm talking, I realize I have my computer in front of me, I can do the research. You can use these more efficient engines on this new, more efficient design. And again, it's going to be very interesting to see where this design goes in a few years. Where Boeing truss braced wing, Boeing X-66. There we go. So I was right with it. So that they want to have it flying as early as 2028. So we're only 5 years away from having a brand new design flying with this new design, and it's very different. It's completely different from anything we've seen in the jet market. It looks very similar to Dash 8s and ATRs design-wise, but to have it as a larger format airline, these massive wings. They're talking about needing the wings to fold, similar to what the 777 is doing now, because the wings are so long, they will not fit into standard gates at the terminals. And the engines I'm talking about are prop fans. So there's been designs in the past. Allison had one. They've tested them on a DC-9 back in the day. But there's a newer design that they're working on for geared turbofans. So what we already see on aircraft like the C-Series and the new Neos and the Maxes and all that kind of stuff, these geared turbofans, but they would have the prop fan, the fan at the front will be exposed into the airstream, and it will be more efficient and create less drag, not having the giant cowling around it. Like I said, it opens up a few other issues in terms of it now being exposed. You can't be close to the ground, so this new truss-based wing will allow it to sit high enough to give clearance, but you also have to worry about blade failure. Right now in a jet engine, if you have a blade failure, it's contained in a usually a bulletproof, what do they make bulletproof vests out of? Not Teflon. See, this is the problem when I do my videos too late at night. Kevlar. Most of the engine cowlings have Kevlar bands in them, so if you have a failure of a fan blade, it's captured within this Kevlar band and it doesn't blow out of the cowling and blow out into the surrounding structure. So that's something they're going to have to look at in terms of safety reliability on these new engines. But either way, we could be looking with this ability to create these active winglets, and now we're looking at truss-based wings, and we could see in the next 20 to 30 years, we could start to see a very big change in how airliners look and operate. It's pretty interesting, but it's also a little scary because it's going to be very, very different. So I'm going to wrap up. That's going to be the main headline news. I don't want to. I'm trying to stick with aviation. I don't want to get outside of aviation, talk about other topics. So I'm going to stick just to aviation. So that's going to be the main headline. Moving on to air shows and events, there have been a few announcements. Thunder over Michigan has made a few. I think I mentioned in the last video the addition of the MiG-23. There's been a few more statics that have been announced. Not much more on the flying display, but in total we're now looking at 10 P-51s that will be flying in some form in the show, along with everything else. I'll put a link down below to a link to their website so you can take a look at their list of aircraft if you want to see the full list. But it's looking to be a very, very cool air show. I'm going to be there all day Friday on the arrival day and Saturday in the photo pit and the night shoot on the Saturday night. So I'm hoping to get quite a bit of video and pictures for that show to make content. I'm going to be doing quite a bit of walk-arounds and stuff, and there's some other surprises that I have planned for the show, so that's going to be a fun show. So yeah, Airshow London's going to have the US Navy Growler demo present only on Sunday. They're in Muskegon, Illinois on the Saturday for a one-day show, so they're going to hop over and do Sunday for the show. Hopefully they'll do their show in Illinois and then transit over and maybe do a flyby on the Saturday and then land and then do their full demo on Sunday. My fingers are crossed because I really want to see those growlers come in on Saturday. I won't be there for the Sunday show, so we'll see how that goes. And then also, as I'm actually filming this right now, it's, as I said, about 8 o'clock in the evening on July 1st. This morning, for Canada Day, Airshow London put out a new announcement for some new aircraft that are going to be there. Hopefully, we'll see an announcement on July 4th. They've historically made a big announcement on July 1st and July 4th. So we'll see what's coming up on, if any, on July 4th. But today's announcement, there's going to be 3 F-35A Joint Strike Fighters. The Lightning IIs are going to be there from the 388th Fighter Group out of Hill Air Force Base in Utah. 3 of them are going to be at the show, and all 3 will be flying in the show. So it's not going to be any type of demo. It's not the U.S. Air Force demo team by any means, but they'll go up, they'll do a couple of passes, they'll do some breaks, they'll make a bunch of noise, they'll have fun. So I'll have 3 of those flying in the show. We're also going to have 2 V-22 Ospreys from, I believe it's VMM 266 out of North Carolina. One of them will be on the static, one of them will be flying in the show. Again, it's not the full U.S. Marine demo. They do a hybrid demo. They did the same as last year, and I think I put some content up last year on it. Really interesting show. My daughter loved it. They put on a good show, so that's exciting. And they've also announced, let's see if I can remember, Super Hornets. There's going to be 2 Super Hornets coming out of, see, now I can't remember where they're coming out of. I'll have a shot of it here, the announcement, when I edit this video, so you'll see there'll be 2 Super Hornets on static display as well. So we've got quite a bit of aircraft already announced, and we're still a few months out, and London is always good at getting some last-minute additions to that show. So I'm very excited for that show as well in September. So we're looking forward to that. Moving on to some incidences. The big one, I think this is the 3rd video now I've talked about it, the B-17 wing spar AD. It looks like we're at the tail end of it. I mentioned last month it did not look like this would be a long-term grounding, and it is not. The Command of Air Force out of Arizona with Sentimental Journey, they have their B-17 flying again. Yankee Air Museum, as of this weekend, has their aircraft Yankee Lady flying again. And Sally B over in England has also been back in the air. And we suspect that most of the other ones, Madras, Maiden, and the other ones, Yield Pub, flown by the Erickson Aircraft Collection. They should be airborne again relatively soon in the airshow circuit, and then all of that will be back up and running. The only other one that's going to be delayed is the original aluminum overcast. That was the airframe that caused the AD in the first place. It has, as I said, with some more serious damage, as well as some damage from that hurricane. It might be down for another year or two before it is up and running again out of EAA in Oshkosh. But it's basically over. The worrying is done. The B-17s are back in the air. The ride programs are back up and running. So we've dodged a bullet with that one. Other incidences, I can't really show the video because it's YouTube and copyright claims and everything else. I'll throw up a screenshot here of the incident. The C-123 Thunder Pig flown out of Pennsylvania. It's the only C-123 provider still flown in the world, used on the airshow circuit. Had a bit of an interesting landing in Geneseo. So here's the shot of it. The picture I can post of it as it came into land. As best as we can tell, it looks like it came into land with a really stiff left crosswind, almost 90-degree crosswind. And as they land, from what I understand, when you put the throttles into reverse, they have reverse pitch on the props. And when you put the props into reverse pitch, it locks the elevator and the rudder to limit buffeting on the tail. And with the crosswind, it meant they did not have the rudder authority to keep that plane straight, and the crosswind lifted the wing, and you can see the outcome. Kudos to the pilots to keep that aircraft under control and recover as quickly and as safely as they did. There was no damage to the aircraft or anything on the ground. It's just a scary looking moment. Aircraft was up again flying on the Sunday, flew back home, and if all goes well, it should be in Michigan in August, so I'll get to see that on the ground. And I think I've only ever seen that aircraft once before, and it's a really, really cool plane. So I'm very, very happy to get to go and look at it again. So that was that. The big one that really made all the news, we had a Citation V crash just west of Washington, D.C. It took off. It flew towards Republic Airport in New York. Just along the coast, it lost contact. So just along the east coast of the continental U.S., heading eastbound over the ocean towards Long Island. It lost contact with ATC. It stayed at 39,000 feet. Altitude didn't vary at all. It continued. I'll put up a shot of the radar tracking software so you can see the track it did. And it stayed at 39,000 feet. You can see it made the turn at Republic Airport to line up for the runway, and then continued flying a straight line right back to its departure airport, which is what an autopilot would do if there was no pilot input. So it stayed at it had an altitude hold, and it was just flying waypoints. And once it passed the arrival airport, it cycled back to the departure airport and just flew straight back to its departure point. As it approached Washington, D.C., and the pilot wasn't responding to any radio calls, a number of F-16s were scrambled, and 2 F-16s out of Atlantic City went supersonic over the continental U.S. to intercept this aircraft. And reports were that there was the pilots couldn't see the pilot, and there was no response from the pilot on radio calls or flares or anything. And then just after they crossed over Washington, D.C. on the western side of Washington, D.C., the aircraft entered a right-hand spin and impacted ground. So by all means, all evidence points towards all evidence points towards an hypoxia event. Something happened. The aircraft lost either pressurization or lost oxygen. The crews passed out. At that altitude, it would happen in less than a minute, probably even less than 30 seconds, depending on the person's physiology. But very, very quickly, you would lose consciousness, and that would be it. So that happened. They're still looking for evidence. Apparently, the aircraft did not have a flight data recorder, but it did have a cockpit voice recorder, and they're trying to find it. Last I heard was they did not find it yet. Investigators haven't found that yet, and the wreckage was basically tiny pieces. It was high energy, vertical impact. There's not a lot left of this airframe. So I think there's not going to be much left for them to do the investigation. So I think it's going to come down to the assumption of a hypoxia event, but time will tell. We'll let the investigators do their job, and whenever the final report comes out, I'll make sure we get everybody updated on that. I don't want to speculate too much, but all evidence is pointing towards an hypoxia event. As well, while we're on this line of incidents, Jim Tweeto was killed in a Cessna 182 crash up in Alaska. Now, for those of you who don't know, he was one of the main characters in the reality show Flying Wild Alaska. They followed him, his daughter, and a number of other pilots flying bush planes, King Airs, Beech 1900s, his red Cessna 182 around Alaska on different flights and different missions. He had an engine issue on takeoff, and the aircraft kind of went in, and him and the passenger were both killed. Only reason I bring it up is just because he was a relatively publicly known pilot. But this is the nature of the beast with bush flying, unfortunately. Accidents happen. There was another one recently. I'm going to add it into the the next news video, just for the fact that it happened just a couple of days ago, and there isn't a lot of information out yet. So I'll include that in the next month's video update. Yeah, so that's that. The other big one that happened was the RCAF lost a Chinook just outside of CFB Petawawa. It was on a nighttime training mission, and just after midnight, I believe it was like 12:05 a.m., the aircraft went down into the Ottawa River just beside Petawawa. Four crew were on board. The two crew members who were in the back were able to exit the aircraft. Whether it was before impact or post-impact hasn't been announced yet, but those two were recovered safe. The two pilots, unfortunately, did not get out of the airframe. They were later recovered deceased from the aircraft. So again, there's been no information on the cause of that crash. We're hoping to hear more soon about what happened. Make sure it isn't some sort of systematic issue with the aircraft. And as sad as I want to say, I'm hoping it was just pilot error and nothing systematic. It was just something happened and caused the crash. But it's pretty big in the Canadian RCAF. It's a pretty tight-knit community. There's only the one unit 450 squadron out of Petawawa that flies them, and I believe we only have 15 or 16 of them. So to lose one, it's a pretty big blow to the helicopter family in the RCAF. So my ears are open to find out some more information on that crash. And just while we're talking about that, another piece of news that popped into my head that I remember hearing about. I mentioned last month about the RCAF looking to buy the P-8 Poseidon, and recently the U.S. State Department has approved the sale of P-8s to Canada. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. It just means the Canadian government and the RCAF went down and said, hey, what's your information? What's your pricing? Let me know what you guys can do if we choose to buy these. We got pricing, we got information. They brought that one up for CanSec, and now the State Department has said, yes, if you do want to buy them, you can buy them. So it looks like this purchase is going to go forward. Timelines are a little fuzzy at this point, but I suspect sooner rather than later, they'll get that ball rolling. The production line will be closing soon-ish. They're not going to be keeping that one open for too long. So very soon we should get some, within a year, I want to say, we'll probably get word that that purchase will go ahead. So I think I'm going to wrap up the news there. I'm sure there's news out there I'm missing. As always, if there's anything out there that any of you want me to talk about that you think I should be bringing up on these news roundups, down below in the description, you'll find the email news@seansaviation.com. Throw me an email, put a comment down below, message me on Facebook, whatever you want to do. Let me know if there's anything out there you want me to talk about. And I can talk about it, and especially if you want me to go into my opinion or just do the research or just talk about it, whatever you want, let me know. I'll go through, and if I think it's a topic worthy of talking about it, I will bring it up, and I will credit whoever's idea it was to bring it up. So that being said, as I said, I'm going to wrap this up. It's a little late at night. I'm getting tired, and I still have to edit this video during the day tomorrow to get this thing up in time. So all that being said, thank you for watching. We'll see you all next time.